So thank you, everybody. So, yeah, right. So first, Paul and Walter, again, thank you, because you are really our biggest partner. We always say this, we have more students from Mines and more joint faculty from Mines. We're just across the hill. So it's an amazing collaboration. I'm super excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about the energy transition and where we're going and how do we build a clean, resilient, and affordable energy future. So a little bit about ourselves. So the very important point for NREL is, what are some of the big things we need to develop? And I always say, this is our strategic plan. One slide describing NREL. You will see that we have three very large kind of programs: integrated energy pathways, electrons to molecules, circular economy for energy materials. But what I want to highlight there in the middle, and you've heard this also, I think, through the whole meetings, is the NREL team, what we call ourselves NRELians. So this is where we're spending a lot of time right now. How do you design a laboratory for the future? How do you develop this? How do you attract people from all over the world to come to us and work with us to move this energy transition forward? So this again describes NREL. We're going to go into a little bit, what is this? What does this mean? Integrated energy pathways. You've heard this a little bit already. How do you integrate all this together? So our homes getting much smarter. They're getting integrated. Now put transportation into this. How to do this between solar and wind and storage and transportation and everything between. How to integrate all these things together that we're creating these energy systems of the future. Electrons to molecules. Yes, we will need hydrocarbons for a very long time, for materials, for other jet fuel. Hydrocarbons will be important. So, but how do we create hydrocarbons for the future? It is very likely that we probably cannot afford to pump them out of the ground and just burn them. So what about if we develop systems to make custom-designed hydrocarbons using electricity, which is becoming the cheapest way of energy? And can we take an electron and make a hydrocarbon, a carbon-carbon bond out of this? So we call the electrons to molecules. In Europe, it's power to fuels, power to X. The same concept. A lot of people now in the world starting to work on this kind of concept. You all probably have heard this, what's happening on, let's say, ammonia or methanol or hydrogen. How do we build this energy molecule which we then can ship around and transport? And then there's circular economy for energy materials. So we are on a path that, yes, we will need mining, absolutely. But the point is, what about if we, instead of taking our minerals out of the ground, make our devices and then put them onto a landfill? What about if we find a way early on to bring them back into our economy? Lithium batteries is the best examples. In all these years, we spent this time to optimize energy density and make it as light as possible. And now we realize, to get the materials back is very hard. So this concept has to be built into the design of the materials at an earlier stage. These three kind of initiatives describes our portfolio in this energy transition from NREL. So, 17 US Department of Energy National Laboratories, we are one of them. Well, we are here in the beautiful state of Colorado, just around the hill. And again, you know that we as an applied laboratory, our goal really is to accelerate the energy transition and specifically do this in partnerships with universities like Mines, but also with a lot of industrial partners to accelerate this and moving this forward. And that's again why our partnerships are so important. Just a few highlights about NREL. We had a huge growth period over the last 5-6 years. So now we have 4,226 folks. Not that we are counting, but again, this is interesting always to see the stats where we are heading. So you see that there are a lot of folks and students and a lot of people coming to NREL. But what's very important is what you're seeing on this one, active partnerships. So in 2023, we have more than 1,100 active partnerships, from industry to universities to other federal agencies. This is, in our opinion, absolutely critical to accelerate this energy transition and move this forward. That's again why we're spending a lot of time with a big team to build onto these partnerships, because we're realizing this problem is bigger than one lab, bigger even than one state, bigger than one country. We need globally a way to accelerate this and moving this forward. So this is also what you see in our facilities. Yes, we have fundamental science facilities, but when you look in the middle here, where some of you might see in the Energy Systems Integration Facility, ESIF, how we call it, where we're doing a lot of the scale-up works, most of this in the electricity sector, in the grid, in partnership with companies. Where I use a facility, a lot of companies come in, bring the equipment, we validate it with them, further develop this, and then hopefully getting deployed in our economy. And the newest building, the energy, materials, and processing at scale, EMAPS, we just did the first ribbon cutting to get the first shovel into the ground last week. So this will be a $230 million facility, very unique with this idea that we're doing material research, but also focusing on working with industry to scale this. So this building will be designed to go from a test tube to a prototype pilot plant type of activity in one facility with laboratories and high base all together in one facility. And then some of you know this when you go towards Boulder, you see some of the wind turbines. That's NREL's facility, that's Aries. We now start to integrate all of this activity up to 20 megawatts to see how can we actually implement this, where we can model and simulate every grid on the planet, and then bring this hardware in the loop into this activity to bring this together and then hopefully get this out into the economy. Our science driver, as you all know, we started as the Solar Energy Research Institute series. We're doing a lot of renewables, but now our portfolio has changed. We're doing a lot of work in transportation and building, and also especially in the energy system integration activity. So a few highlights I want to share with you in the science, which is really, in our opinion, very exciting and fascinating what's happening. First one is developing perovskite for space. So people ask, why do you want to do this for space? Yeah, this is another point where when you bring new technology, how do you get this into the market? So if you do this on our planet, so there's a lot of issues like, well, bankability, what is the cost, how do you scale this? That's again why we're moving in perovskites also to see what can we do in space. Perovskites, what we call solar ink. So this can be a tremendous opportunity in solar. We'll be able to do solar panels the way we're producing newspapers. So it's a roll-to-roll process, very different, cheaper than anything we have done so far in this technology. So what we're doing in space. So first of all, on the upper picture, you're seeing here that we are part of launching a satellite, which has the first perovskite solar panel going into space to validate this. So why is space industry so interested? Because you're seeing on this cartoon down there, you could envision that you, for example, make solar panels on the moon with this new type of printing technologies in this space. And hopefully from there we can learn to see how we further accelerate this kind of solar development here on the planet. So perovskites could be a very exciting way to significantly even further lower the cost of electricity produced by solar. You've probably all seen this. Solar is seen as the big opportunity. When you look into some areas, so I've seen reports now off-grid independent that we're going below 1 cent a kilowatt hour by producing and using solar to produce electricity. So this is very, very cheap, and this technology might make it even cheaper in the future. Then wind. Some of you also might have seen the New York Times article, what we had just a few weeks ago, where our folks developed a new blade, which is based on a new resin, pecan, what you call it. So this is a tremendous opportunity because suddenly it has 40% less greenhouse gas emission and required 30% less energy to produce this. So the idea down with this resin is that you can recycle the wind blades. Why is this important? When you drive, for example, to California, you're seeing this, that some of the wind parks, it's too expensive even to get these blades off their properties and bring them into a landfill. So they're laying around. So we have to think in a different way also for wind. Because if we continue deploying this wind at very large scale, we also have to think about this, how we can recycle some of these wind blades and bring them back. So we're very excited at our facility. We did this prototype, and then we teamed up with a company, and they now made the first full-scale wind blade, and it's now flying on a wind turbine. And again, if you look back into this and interested, find this New York Times article highlighting this activity, where it's now taking a lot of excitement also from industry, because another advantage with this technology is that with this new resins, you can also repair the wind blades in the field, which is again right now not possible. So you can see even with technology where wind is now so cheap already, do we need to continue to do research? Absolutely, because this type will bring this industry to this next level in the years to come. Net zero SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. I talked about this in the electrons to molecules. A lot of big progress has been made there, and we still have a lot of work to do. So this is a technology partnership also with LanzaJet, so where we're using kind of ethanol plants, bring this together with new catalysts, and from this we can go from corn ethanol through this process and building jet fuel directly. You know, this is a major problem, not only here in the US, and when you look into some of the European regulations, so very soon, if there's not a certain amount of sustainable aviation fuel part of your mixture, they will not allow you to fly over Europe. So that's why you're also seeing that a lot of airplane companies and manufacturers and airlines like United, name it, they are really interested in exploring what can we do to get this cost of SAFs to a level that is competitive. So this process right now predicts it could be $2.75 gallons per SAF. So it's still a little bit on the high end, but you're seeing some of these technologies moving in the right direction, and this can be a big breakthrough in changing how we're creating sustainable aviation fuel in the future. And again, what I said, partnership. This showed you as an example that all of these projects are really in deep partnership with our industrial partners like Excel and other utilities and companies like Exxon and Shell to really see what can we do to move this space forward. And then there's the Global Energy Park. So some of you might have heard about this. So this is a very interesting activity. Our governors pushing hard to see what can we do in our area to bring this amazing partnership we have between NREL, the core universities like Mines and Boulder and CSU together, and industry to create this activity in our space, to bring more companies in, to creating this partnership to further accelerate this clean energy transition. So the governor and the core universities and NREL, we're doing this together to see what can we develop, can we build a kind of new facility to accelerate this industrial collaboration and bring all the parties here to our great state to accelerate this transition, moving this forward. So super exciting project, and we hope right now that we're getting more interest also from companies to be part of this endeavor to move this forward. I also want to shift a little bit and give you another very exciting opportunity where we're having in our country. And this is the equitable energy transition. How do you do this that you bring everybody along in this transition? So we're now moving into the stage where we said the early adopters, we moving this forward. So I would say, yeah, if you're living in Beverly Hills, in Hollywood, well, you probably have the money to buy a Tesla and a battery storage for your garage. But how do you do this in other areas? How do you do this in rural America? How do you make sure that our coal communities are making this transition? And how can we do this that everybody benefits from this transition? Why is this important? We cannot just leave certain groups in the US and globally behind. If not everybody profits from this transition, we will not be successful. So a couple of examples there, what's happening here. So the first is the LA 100 Equity Strategy Project. So some of you might have seen this. We have done this study with LA on what's called LA 100. Well, LA, the utility came to us and said, NREL, we need your help. We want to go to 100% renewable energy. That's what LA decided. And so how can we get there? What can we do? So we modeled every rooftop in LA, where we modeled every transmission line, especially also on the impact on wildfire, where we modeled every charging station based on traffic for the electrification. So this took 3 years, a lot of computing space to do this, but we came up at the end with a blueprint, which we handed over to LA and said, this is the blueprint. This is where you can put your solar, this is where you can put your wind, this is the transmission line you have to build, this is the electric charging infrastructure you have to build. So in deep collaboration, we developed this first, in our view, the first kind of detailed implementation plan to move a very large city toward 100% renewable energy. So then the second question came up. So how do you do this for everybody? So because a lot of times right now what we're doing, our transition, for example, is based on tax incentives. So if you, let's say, build solar panels on your rooftop, you get a great tax incentive, great. But what if you don't pay taxes? What about if your tax base is so low because you're living in an area where your income is so low that there's no incentive for you to do this? That's again why this project was started. So again, it was about a year and a half, also very significant enough money to work with LA to explore what policies could you put in place to make this energy transition affordable for everybody, so that not only the wealthier people can make this transition, but also, for example, that you can bring this into South LA. So, for example, some of the studies have showed that South LA, some of the homes there, the structure, you cannot put solar panels on the roof because the roof will not take this additional weight. How can you do this? How can you bring everybody along in this transition? Now, this type of activity really expanded into many, many different areas. So now there's a different project which is called C2C, where we're working with a lot of communities across the United States to help them in this transition. And this is, for example, some communities are just interested in building a kind of charging station in their kind of little town or city. How do you do this? Other utilities say, well, we want to go and building more battery storage. How do you do this? The problem what we have seen that a lot of people right now want to make this transition, but they don't have the resources and the knowledge to do this. So they don't have the expert actually inside their kind of environment to help them in helping them to guide them through this transition. This is why these equitable projects are, in our opinion, so important. Another example you might have seen, this was in Puerto Rico. So this was also in the news. We worked with Puerto Rico over the last year and a half to see how can you completely redesign an electricity grid for an island like Puerto Rico. You all know, twice completely destroyed by a hurricane. So now rebuilding this, would you really rebuild this in the same way what we've done before? What will happen with the next hurricane? Yeah, we all know it will knock it out again. So what new concept can you do? So we have done this in very close kind of teamwork with the utilities there, with the Puerto Rican government, but also with a lot of kind of non-profit organization driven from the island. And I give you this, where they made the decision, they want to go to 100% renewable energy. First question what we had to answer, is this even possible? Is there enough resources in wind and in solar and in geothermal or tidal energy to actually do this? Can they actually do this? The answer was yes, they can. But then the next big discussion came up. If you have a certain limited amount of land, so where do you put, let's say, your solar? So some of the developers said, well, this is a flat area, let's put a solar panel down there. And then the community says, no, wait a minute, you can't do this because this is the space we need to grow our vegetables. Land use change is a big issue in communities like islands. How do you bring all these different components together and answer this and bring this forward? And this is one of these examples what we've learned over the years, that it's not, we cannot just show up in communities and say, this is the way you want to do this. You have to give the communities opportunities to be part of this decision. Otherwise, it will not happen. And this is very, very complicated. And I remember this when the secretary called me and said, Martin, what are you planning to do? You have 100 community organizations part of this. Nothing ever will happen. Till she went there the first time and talked to the communities and understand what the problems are and how important it is to do this jointly and bring them on the right path. So the reason I'm highlighting this for us, because we as NREL, we don't have an agenda. We are not providing the data and say, well, you have to do X or Y. We just can provide the communities with enough research data that they can make the decision what is the best for each of the community. And every community is very different. We're working, for example, with a utility in the south, a lot of nuclear. They're doing the same like a LA100 study with us. And the question was, it's very different because they want to build out a nuclear fleet and want to continue nuclear and then want to bring in renewables. So it's very different from Puerto Rico or LA. The key is right now, how do you scale this? We need more folks also in this area who understand how communities think and be part and understand energy transition and the communities to help to guide the communities towards this next transition. And also we're doing this on a global scale. So the Net Zero World Initiative was created 2 years ago, which again, we've done this with a lot of interesting countries. And I give you this one example, which is personally very moving for me. So I was sitting in a meeting with Bill Gates and the energy minister from Ukraine. And we had this discussion about Ukraine and where Ukraine is going. And he talked to me and said, Martin, look, well, you have problems with hurricane or drought or tornadoes knocking out your infrastructure. We have problems that people throw bombs on our system. How do we build energy infrastructure which is resilience, not only built on kind of natural disasters, but also on a security side? Cybersecurity is the next problem we have to deal with. So when you develop these energy systems of the future, we have to take all these different elements into account. You might probably have seen what I can share with you here. We're doing a lot of work with this specific country, and you probably have seen this when Ukraine made the decision to go into a much more distributed system, because the data shows that it's easier to protect their grid with a very distributed system versus if you have some of these very large power stations, which are very easily to be knocked out. So by look, all of these things right now, unfortunately, in our world, are a very important element in the design of these next energy systems for the future. This, again, why this work, doing as a community in this space, is so critical right now to accelerate and move this forward. So, and this is my point now to all the students in this. Join us. So, as you know, we have a lot of internships and postdocs and students, and I know we have a lot of you already from Mines. So, if you're interested in being part of NREL and being part of this tremendous partnership between NREL and Mines, please reach out to us. So, this is a tremendous opportunity we have, because we need the brightest of all of you to do this. Then the young generation, you will have to solve this problem for our planet. If we are not doing this in the next 10, 15 years, we have an issue. So this is, again, please, if you're interested, reach out to us, talk to your kind of professors. We're having all these connections. Look into this, what we could do together, because we need all of you to accelerate this and move this forward. So, and with this, I want to stop here and thank you all for your attention.